Shame, 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 Skyra, shame, 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 Skyra, shame, 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 Skyra, oh.
One day me been a bamboo down, and me see Tyra lay down there, and me ask see Tyra what she do there. See Tyra ice up she petticoat wine like a boxing goat. See Tyra man there, oh see Tyra man there. See Tyra man there, oh see Tyra man there.
Sunday morning I was passing, and me see Tyra lay down there, and me ask see Tyra what she do there. See Tyra ice up she petticoat wine like a boxing goat. See Tyra man there, oh see Tyra man there. See Tyra man there, oh see Tyra man there. Shame, 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 Tyra, shame, 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 Tyra, shame, 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 Tyra, oh.
One day me been a waka now, and me see Tyra pon the down, and me ask see Tyra what she do there. See Tyra ice up she petticoat wine like a boxing goat. See Tyra man there, oh see Tyra man there. See Tyra man there, oh see Tyra man there.
One day me been a waka now, and me see Tyra on the down, and me ask see Tyra what she do there. See Tyra ice up she petticoat wine like a boxing goat. See Tyra man there, oh see Tyra man there. See Tyra man there, oh see Tyra man there.
See Tyra,
Man there,
oh see Tyra,
man there.
see Tyra,
Man there.
oh see Tyra.
Shame, shame, Skyra, shame, 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 Skyra, oh.
One day me been a bamboo down, and me see Tyra lay down there, and me ask see Tyra what she do there. See Tyra ice up she petticoat wine like a boxing goat. See Tyra man there, oh see Tyra man there. See Tyra man there, oh see Tyra man there.
Sunday morning I was passing, and me see Tyra lay down there, and me ask see Tyra what she do there. See Tyra ice up she petticoat wine like a boxing goat. See Tyra man there, oh see Tyra man there. See Tyra man there, oh see Tyra man there. Shame, 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 Tyra, shame, 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 Tyra, shame, 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 Tyra, oh.
One day me been a waka now, and me see Tyra pon the down, and me ask see Tyra what she do there. See Tyra ice up she petticoat wine like a boxing goat. See Tyra man there, oh see Tyra man there. See Tyra man there, oh see Tyra man.
Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon, Guyana. Good afternoon to the Caribbean. Good afternoon to the people of North America. Good evening to those in the UK. Australia, I think it would be morning time now. Pleasant good morning to those in the Australia, New Zealand area. And just pleasantries to everyone around the world that is watching. Welcome to Over to You. I hope that everybody is doing and keeping well. Please go ahead, like the program, start sharing the link. We're going to have a discussion this afternoon, and I would be needing your feedback. Your feedback is very, very important. So please use the comment section and make it active. Okay, let's have some dialogue today as we break down the week, right? It's been a very, very eventful week, right? We all would have known what would have happened with that UN Human Rights Committee, the meetings that they would have had with the engaged members of the PPPC as they had their little delegation put to the side there to answer questions. We're gonna break down a few things this afternoon. So please share the link, like the program, and let's roll along here. A lot of people, a lot of people believe that the PPPC, their delegation was not ready for the questions that was posed by the UN Human Rights Committee. But before we even get to the questions that were posed, how can one possibly be ready to answer those questions with the stockpile of atrocities that the PPPC would have committed against the Guyanese people? You could never, one who would have committed that amount of atrocities could never be ready to answer those questions that were posed. Right? So that's one thing. They can never be prepared for that. It was just too much for them. They were totally overwhelmed. They were shocked because they never expected what that committee would have delivered. Social media has really, really changed and transformed the way that news gets around. It's not on the ground now through a newspaper or through a radio broadcast. Anyone now can transmit a story. Anyone now can share information. It's a great thing, right? Social media do have its pros and cons like everything else. But in this case, it was excellent. Now, let's start off. Let's talk a little bit about the judiciary and the appointments of the Chief Justice and the Chancellor of the Judiciary. Right? That question was posed. And as to why they weren't confirmed, they're both in an acting capacity. And it has been so for quite a while. August 20th is going to be 4 years since the PPPC would have been installed into government. Might I say it again? Installed into government. And they have done absolutely nothing when it comes to appointing the Chief Justice and the Chancellor of the Judiciary. That puts the judiciary from a holistic perspective in a very, very volatile position with these two individuals who should have been individuals of power. They are acting in the position. They're doing a relatively decent job. But they still have to look over their shoulders. Why? Because there's a decision that has to be made, that needs to be made for them to be confirmed, permanently in those positions. And who has to make that decision? The president. He is one of the people, and he has to engage the opposition. And the opposition leader, Aubrey Norton, has some time ago agreed with Honorable Yonette Cummins Edwards and Madam Roxanne George Wilshire being confirmed to these positions. So it's not like if the installed president is in a stalemate where the opposition is not engaging him or where he attempted to engage the opposition and Mr. Norton does not like the two candidates. Mind you, some of the decisions that Madam Roxanne George Wilshire would have made would have been questionable. But nevertheless, I feel like if the APNU plus AFC, they want to see democracy across Guyana. So they are not too concerned about decisions that would have been made by Roxanne George. They want fairness, right? Not because some of the decisions that she would have made went against them. They would not vote and consider her for Chief Justice. They actually did. So that put the ball some time ago, because I think Roysdale Ford, Honorable MP, would have brought a case. I think it was Vince Roy Jordan, yes, would have brought a case relating to this same matter, the confirmation of the Chancellor of the Judiciary and Chief Justice. It was heard. The case was heard January 12th of this year. And Anil Nandalal, the Attorney General, installed, because if the government was installed, if the president is installed, then the Attorney General and everybody, they're all installed, right? And if you're installed, the first thing you would want to do is execute on behalf of the people. They're not doing that. He said that Article 127 of the Constitution did not stipulate a specific time period in which the installed president should facilitate these appointments in question. So what I want to know, because 2023 is almost finished. 2024 is almost finished. We're going into 25. Is he waiting until the election year to make these confirmations? At this point, he might as well just go ahead and leave it for the new government to make, because I'm confident that there will be a new government. Let's try to dig into some reasons we think that these appointments, at least I think that these appointments were not made. Number one, these are two smart and talented Afro-Guyanese. Number two, they are both women, meaning females. That is probably not going to sit well with the PPPC. Having two women with such power, and I do believe that it's much more difficult to control women as opposed to men. Women, they seem to be stronger when it comes to integrity. Their integrity and their character matters. Most women. And it's difficult for them to become corrupt. With these two women being confirmed, the PPPC recognized that it would not be business as usual. Because to the extent Madam Roxanne George Wilshire, an Honorable Chancellor of the Judiciary, Yonette Cummins Edwards, is confirmed, that's when the judiciary in Guyana once again becomes independent. They don't have to look over their shoulder and wonder if they're going to be conformed permanently into the positions that they currently sit and act in. Doing a great job. And that's what the PPPC does not want. When you look at the executive, that's the installed President Irfan Ali. He controls that. When you look at the legislative body is the legislative body. But the president plays a big part into that legislative body. And they have a one-seat majority also. So they got that. The judiciary, right? You have these two women that are acting, one as Chief Justice, one as Chancellor of the Judiciary. They are dependent on the executive to confirm them, right? So therefore, right across the board, the PPPC have some measure of control. Hence the reason they are able to exploit Guyana and its people without being properly checked. Now, let's turn to this UN Human Rights Committee. When they spoke of the judiciary and why these two women were not confirmed, they were very emphatic. They had all the necessary information, even more information than any one of us on social media, any one of the activists on social media could have gathered. You may want to ask the question, how come? Why is this? Well, I'm going to say this. That committee would have received an overwhelming amount of letters, an overwhelming amount of complaints in regards to how the judiciary in Guyana is operating. It is not allowed. It's not because it is not independent. Let me make that clear. The judiciary in Guyana, I believe it's about 75% to 80% independent. But it is not allowed to function that way, with the PPPC having their hand in everything. It is not allowed. I remember in one of his statements leading up to the 2020 elections, Jack Dio said that Granger and his government need to get out of power and free the country up. Look at Guyana now. Is Guyana a free country? Is Guyana a free country? It could never be free when you have a vice president. After what? Maybe the first day of the meetings with the human rights, with the UN Human Rights Committee, wanted to know who were the people who reported them. Who are the individuals who submitted letters? I thought Guyana was supposed to be a democracy. We should not want to know who submitted letters and who would have released information. We're a democracy, right? And what would be your reason for wanting to know the names of people who would have submitted information? What's your reason? The people have a complaint? They have a legitimate complaint? What do you do as a government or a side of the government? In a democracy, you would engage the opposition. You guys would have a discourse and you would try to come to a solution. That's not possible in today's Guyana. We have already deemed Guyana a failed state. We have already deemed Guyana a dictatorship. The behavior of the first vice president there shows dictatorial behavior. His ability to have absolute power was damaged tremendously this week by that UN Human Rights Committee. The questions asked were relevant. Why? Because the PPPC would have committed a drove of human rights violations against the people of Guyana. Remember, let's remember Brother Brian Max and what happened there. Let's remember Brother Malcolm Harry Paul and what would have occurred there. Let's remember what happened in Madia also. Not going to rule that just as an accident. You can't have students barred up in a school. That's also a human rights violation right there. And there's numerous others. For those murders that would have occurred in Guyana, where you have all these mothers that have not seen justice for the execution of their children. Those are also violations. The two Henry boys, both of them, their mothers would have passed on. Maybe if they had closure, they would have still been here with us. I am happy that this committee was able to see how brutal, how brutal, how biased this PPPC installed regime is. They lack any measure of decorum. When you look at how the people of Guyana, look at our teachers. Look at our teachers. That's a good example. These meetings happen on the back of our teachers being in the street for 4 weeks. This meeting happens in the same week also that the Ministry of Education could not have presented information to Justice Kesu that they have actually been negotiating with the GTU. And they have got in their possession overwhelming evidence to show that the course of collective bargaining was happening. But the Attorney General, Mr. Anil Nandalal, boasted, we have the evidence. You see, when you hear people talk, there's a saying, talk is cheap, right? People don't want to hear you talk. They want to see. Show me what you got. Don't tell me. Show me. He couldn't do it. And it bothers me. You know why? Because this installed regime have quite a bit of Guyanese who believe in them. You're just believing in propaganda, right? And propaganda gets you nowhere. The country has to move. The country has to move. Guyana's been posturing in the same position. The 23 years under the PPPC, we had 5 solid years under the coalition. People may say, Mr. C's, you're being biased, 5 solid years. Well, here, I'm going to agree to be biased here. And I'm going to hold my position. Why? When people are not dying, I'm happy. When there's proper security in place for my Guyanese brothers and sisters, I am happy. When we have a properly run police force, I am very happy. When corruption is down, literally non-existent, I am happy. When we have a new government that comes into place, right, and take us off of that corruption list, because it's not a good thing when you on that corruption list and your country is being considered as corrupt. Nobody wants to negotiate with you. Nobody wants to give you a loan, right? Banks don't want to deal with drug dealers. Banks want to deal with authentic people. They don't want to deal with drug dealers. Okay, because a drug dealer can promise you your money next month. But if his deal does not go down properly, you ain't getting your money. Right? That's major risk, number one. And number two, being a drug dealer is not a legal practice. That can get a banking institution in major trouble. So that's not going to happen. The coalition government of 2015 to 2020 was able to weed out all that corruption. Yes, it brought us to a bare economy, because what we recognize is that under the PPPC government, a lot of corruption and drug dealings is what propped up the economy in Guyana, is what would have given us that cash flow in Guyana that a lot of people was happy with. When you see something and you see cash flow is just flowing, you need to go and you need to find the source of that cash flow and make sure it's a legal source, because it is only going to be temporary in nature if the source is illegal. So in moving our country forward, another thing that the committee would have spoken on also is electoral reform and proper reform when it comes to campaigning. And that I want to touch on a little bit. I don't feel it is right that when a party is in power, it uses government funds to campaign. And then when it uses the government fund to campaign, the way the monies are being distributed is in a very lawless manner. You can't drive around cars and motor vehicles being guarded by police officers to give out grants and to transport money from hand to hand. How do you track that? You walk with a book and you put a check next to the name. It's the 21st century, man. All these monies being budgeted in the budget for infrastructural work. Why don't we invest in some coal storage in Guyana, where we can have our computerized information stored? All our CCTV camera footage, all our banking information stored in Guyana, not in China, in Guyana. We're an oil producing nation, right? We're the fastest growing economy, right? We have to show that we're the fastest growing economy. We've got to see it. Our people have got to see it. Banking should be electronic. The PPPC talk about, again, this is based on questioning from the same UN committee about the amount of Guyanese that are in the welfare system. Words does not do it. you have to back it up with data. And data now, for the most part, it's easier stored electronically. We want to have a situation, or we should, as the fastest growing economy in the world with under a million people, we should have our own servers on the ground in Guyana that is picking up all our information. Have the Guyanese people ever agreed to have their information stored in other countries? Have there ever been an agreement between government and the people in regards to that? Because one personal information is very, very important, right? And should not be available to any and everyone. Right? We are still regarded as a third world country, but it doesn't mean that Guyanese information should be available to any and every body. I speak of cold storage and having these cold storages to have our servers and all. It's an excellent idea because we could have so many ministries that would become, the data storage, amongst other things, would become, computerized. For example, the ministry that takes care of birth certificates, right? Stuff like voters list, GCOM also. This would help GCOM tremendously. Although right now GCOM, and I'm not going to say it allegedly, it's run by Barry Jagdeo. He's a spokesperson for GCOM. No one has seen the GCOM, the head of GCOM in an eternity. I know she was a bit ill, but I haven't seen her for an eternity. But anyhow, getting back to this cold storage. In order to execute this, GPL, Guyana Power and Light, would need a complete overhaul. And it's been needing that for some time now. Since the PPPC would have been installed into power in 2020, what have they done to facilitate better electricity service to the people of Guyana? Nothing. They would have ordered a few second-hand generators the other day. I don't even know if the things are up and running. They cannot be up and running because people are complaining of having blackout for 16 hours a day. But you're still putting up tall buildings. You cannot supply electricity to the infrastructure that you have right now. Instead of addressing the issue of electricity, you're putting up new buildings. So although you're infrastructure-based government, even that you're not doing correctly. The treatment of your people is way off across the board. I heard Ms. Gail Teixeira during that meeting with the UN Human Rights Committee. And Mr. Teixeira, you got this wrong. You spoke of free education, but you were not detailed. It's supposed to be from nursery to tertiary. You were just general. Why were you not detailed in all of the untruths that you would have told this past week? I cannot go back and go through the proceedings to find the amount of time that you would have spoken untruthfully to that committee. You should be embarrassed. But there's no way that the PPPC could have sent anyone else. Irfan Ali could not have went as the installed president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana before that committee. He cannot communicate at that level. The installed vice president, Jagdeo, he could not go before that committee. Because if that Vice News reporter had him stuttering and misfiring, just picture what would have happened if he went before that committee. He is guilty of so much. This is nothing about allegedly guilty. He's guilty. Barrett Jagdeo is guilty. He is guilty for the suffering that the Guyanese people continue to face. 23 plus 3 years, 4 years, August 20th. Same thing. Same thing. Living in a society under threat. There's one thing that I wanted to speak about and touch on a bit also this afternoon. Barry Jagdeo, you see, and I said this before, I believe that this man does not sleep certain nights. Himself and other leaders within the PPPC would have taken their time and studied Afro-Guyanese men in particular. And across the board, not just Afro-Guyanese, we need to wake up. Guyana is supposed to be a democracy. Allow your brothers and sisters to speak. Stop having one man influencing you to go there and harm someone for speaking. Think about what you're doing before you do it. There's a saying, what goes around do come around. And I believe that. I personally believe that. Allow the people to speak. They are the people of Guyana is who pay your salaries. Barra Jagdeo, Irfan Ali, Anil Nandalal, and all the ministers of the PPPC and all the MPs of the APNU plus AFC and their leader, Mr. Aubrey Compton Norton. They are all public servants. But Barry Jagdeo seems to think that his job is not to serve the public. Guyanese, the people of Guyana, all 6 ethnic groups, please understand your rights. Understand your rights. The government does not put you in place. You are the ones who put government in place. In return, the government is responsible for serving you. Okay? First and foremost, the people. The government is not put there to first and foremost serve investors, especially exterior investors. Is it important to have investment in your country? Absolutely. And we welcome all parties to investment in Guyana, providing you're clean and your records indicate that. Providing that when you're in our country, you're investing, when you're extracting oil and whatever it is that you're doing, your financial reports are accurate. Yes, Guyana is a third world country. Yes, we are unprepared. We were unprepared and we are still unprepared when it comes to managing the oil industry. The government is not on top when it comes to managing the oil industry. Both parties, well, the APNU plus AFC was only there for 5 years. But 23 years ago, when the PPPC were there for the full 23 years, they know that oil exploration was going to be coming to the forefront in Guyana. But we are losing big time now. You know why? Because we did not take the time to invest in our people by sending them out of the country to study oil and gas. So now we are at the point where we are actually extracting oil. We don't have the proper experts in place to deal with it. And then the PPPC, once they would have entered into power in 2020, they would have removed Dr. Adams, who is one of the few experts when it comes to oil and gas that we have in Guyana. That move was not a democratic move. It was merely a political move so that the PPPC can exploit the oil industry in Guyana. Dr. Mark Bino, same thing. Those 2 men, they were experts. They are experts. A smart government would have left them in place and give both of them 3 to 5 understudies to learn oil and gas. The PPPC is backwards. And all they're interested in is money, and money right now. We want to get rich, and we want to get rich right now. The installed President Ali with next year being an election year. I'm just trying to think, what is going to be your pitch to the people of Guyana? What are you going to tell them that you would have done for them? University is not free. 16-hour blackouts, 8-hour blackouts, 5-hour blackouts. It doesn't matter. The times are going to vary. The bottom line is blackouts anyway. Oil and gas being mismanaged. Everybody just asks about the $240 million. Well, we received $3 million. So we're actually talking about the $211 million. Million US dollars, not Guyana, US. You cannot write off. You cannot write off $211 million. Look at our teachers. Look at our nurses. Look at our public servants from a holistic perspective. They all need a raise to conquer high food prices, cost of living across the board, to go along with inflation. It doesn't seem as if inflation ever goes down in Guyana, and I want to know why. I want to know why. It's interesting that we're importing a lot of foods that are normally produced in our country. It's very interesting. The government has not put together a robust plan to provide assistance to our rice farmers, our cash crop, vegetables. Is expensive across the board in Guyana. Poultry farming, meat has gone through the roof. Guys, we're talking about 20 odd 30 years ago on the Linden Farm, Samson Burnham, we didn't experience food shortages. And even if we did, nothing close to what's happening now. Instead of calling big dance off at the stadium, having our people get lawless by the minute. And parents, you need to have a little more leverage, control over your children. I would have said on an earlier program, we have to make 10 steps backwards to make 2 giant steps. That's going to cover those 10 steps backwards and way more. We need to go back to that. We need to get back to family values. We need to get back to community values. When you have all the big stores moving into your community, how you think these stores are able to survive? They're able to survive because you support them. You ignore the normal mom and pop store on the corner because something may cost $2 more, or because something may cost $25 more. It's better you spend an additional $25 knowing that that money is going to stay right in your community. But when you go to the big store and you push all your money out there, it is gone. It is gone. It is not doing anything for your community. It is gone. Guyanese, you need to step back. You need to study. Study your foreparents. Study them. Go back to their history. A lot of us think that the history of our foreparents are not relevant. It is very relevant. And it's because we don't practice it. That's why we're in the position that we're in today. Our foreparents had to maintain a high level of integrity across the board, all 6 ethnic groups, to hand over precious Guyana to us to manage. We sat there as a people and we allowed one man. It looked like if when his parents died, Guyana was in the will for him. People, you need to step up. Guyana is supposed to be a representative democracy. It is not a dictatorship. Step up, understand your rights. Support the party of your choice. I'm not telling you where to vote, where to sway. I'm not trying to sway your vote here. But you would have seen, you would have gotten a great sample of what the PPPC gives. You would have gotten a good sample of what they give. Standing up to this in-store regime, I know it's not easy. A lot of people say, you know, Wayne, you're not on the ground in Guyana. I understand that. But what are you going to do? You're going to live in fear and allow your children to grow up and live in that same fear? Maybe allow your neighbor's son to disappear? You don't want to know that your money, your hard-earned money, which is then taxed tremendously, and the taxes is going into a police force that is working for the government. It is now working for you. Gail Teixeira, in one of our responses to the UN committee, Human Rights Committee, would have said, we cannot speak to that. I can't remember the exact, oh yes, reporting Barra Jagdeo for corruption. Well, a report was not made at the police station. The police does not work for the people. The police more so works for Barra Jagdeo. When I say the police, I'm not talking about police officers all across the board. There are some good police officers in the Guyana police force. I have friends that are there. At this time, they have to remain quiet. Okay? These guys want to have their retirement intact. They cannot afford to lose everything. This installed government is dominant when it comes to the Guyana Police Force and the Guyana Defense Force. They made sure that they put their people at the top of these two institutions to manage them and to control them. the Guyanese people, to the Guyanese people, you have to continue to remain vigilant. This week was a very, very good week for democracy in Guyana. The opposition needs to stay on the front foot. They need to remain steadfast, continue to be on the ground, continue to hold their rallies. It is important. Make sure that they have prepared a good vision, an excellent vision, and their strategy is good come 2025, when the competition for who takes the wheel of Guyana is up for grabs. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for joining. This week wasn't a call-in week. I want to thank all the sponsors of this program. And special thanks to the owner of 107.1 FM, Mr. Mark Anthony Benchop. I thank him for giving me this time that I am able to come on and spend with you guys. Let's keep the momentum going. Guyana is ours. Guyana belongs to the people, all 6 ethnic groups. Again, thank you guys for joining. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Everyone, you could see the sponsors. Thanks, Lemon, for putting up. Sunita London. Andrews. Everybody, you got to pick up your groceries. You know where to go. Andrews Supermarket, Aubrey Barker, and Rob Street. Says School Electronic Inc. We have our electrical specialist, Mr. Sherwin Green. He does excellent work. You need electrical work done, please feel free to reach out to Mr. Green. Uniform store, whether it is nursing uniform, school uniform, nursing, whether you're working in a nursing home and you need a uniform, please contact the uniform store and you can pick up your items there. Benchop Immigration Consultancy. You're looking for a new passport. You're looking to get your citizenship done. You have other immigration questions. Feel free to reach out to the Benchop Consultancy, Immigration and Law. To the extent you're unable, the number is right there, but to the extent you're unable to get on to Mr. Mark Benchop, who may be busy, please feel free to inbox me and I'm going to line you straight to him. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Have an excellent remainder of the weekend, and I look forward to seeing you all next Saturday. And there's a good chance I'll be on Straight Up sometime during the week next week. Enjoy, everyone. Thank you again.